On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse doors swung open, and billionaire property tycoon Leonard Drake entered like a man who had already won. On his arm was a woman half his wife's age, dressed in a blood-red gown as if it were a celebration, not a divorce. Photographers snapped, whispers followed, and Leonard smirked, enjoying every second of his wife's humiliation. He thought today was the day he would finally bury her dignity, strip her of her home, take her company, silence her forever. He didn't come to court to fight, he came to gloat. But what Leonard didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that the quiet, sharply dressed man sitting beside his wife, the one Leonard assumed was some bargain basement attorney, was actually the judge's top private lawyer, a man no one could hire unless fate or justice intervened. And in the next hour, Leonard's mistress, his empire, and every secret he'd buried for 20 years would be dragged into the light. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. And hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next story. Who is the powerful lawyer the wife hired? How did she get access to a man even billionaires can't reach? Why does Leonard feel untouchable? What secret is he hiding from both women? And why does the judge keep staring at him without blinking? Everything that happens next was set in motion years before this courtroom ever existed. This isn't just about a divorce. This is about a reckoning, 20 years in the making. And Leonard Drake, the man who thought he could buy his way out of anything, is about to learn that some debts can never be paid with money. Let's go back. Back to when Leonard Drake was nobody. Back to when Miriam Cooper was a young woman with dreams of her own, working as an architect in downtown Chicago. She was brilliant, creative, ambitious. She had plans to open her own firm. She had a future that was hers alone. And then she met Leonard at a charity gala in 1985. He was charming, driven, full of fire. He told her he was going to build an empire. He told her he needed someone like her by his side. Someone smart, someone loyal, someone who believed in him when no one else did. Miriam fell in love, not with his money, because back then he didn't have any. She fell in love with his dream, with the man he promised to become, and she made a choice. She put her own dreams on hold. She worked alongside him, late nights, early mornings, crunching numbers, designing properties, pitching investors. She was the backbone of everything Leonard built. The empire everyone knew as his, half of it was hers, maybe more. But Leonard never gave her credit. As the money poured in, as the properties multiplied, as the power grew, Leonard changed. He became colder, more controlling, more obsessed with image and status. He started attending events without her, started treating her like furniture in his mansion, started looking at younger women the way he once looked at her. Miriam tried to hold on. She raised their 2 children, managed the household, smiled at fundraisers, played the perfect wife. But inside, she was disappearing, piece by piece, year by year. Until one night, 3 years ago, Leonard came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers, and told her he wanted a divorce. He didn't ask. He announced it, like she was an employee being let go. And when Miriam asked why, Leonard laughed. He actually laughed. He said, "Because I can afford to." That was the moment Miriam realized the man she loved no longer existed. The man standing in front of her was a stranger who thought money made him untouchable, a stranger who believed he could erase her from his life without consequence. But Miriam didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't break down. She simply nodded, walked upstairs, and locked herself in the guest bedroom. And that night, holding a crumpled tissue in one hand and her phone in the other, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let him destroy her. Not after everything she'd sacrificed. Not after everything she'd built. But there was a problem. Leonard had the best lawyers in the country. He had connections in every courthouse, every law firm, every corner of the legal system. He'd already started moving assets, hiding money, building a case designed to leave her with nothing. Miriam knew she couldn't win with an ordinary attorney. She needed someone extraordinary, someone who couldn't be bought, someone who fought for justice, not for money. And that's when a friend, an old college roommate who worked in legal advocacy, whispered a name to her over coffee. Jonathan Hale. Jonathan Hale was a legend in legal circles, but most people had never heard of him. He didn't advertise. He didn't take on celebrity cases. He didn't chase fame. He worked quietly, privately, taking on cases that mattered, cases involving injustice, exploitation, abuse of power. He was the lawyer judges called when they couldn't sleep at night because someone guilty had walked free. He was the man prosecutors turned to when they knew the system had failed. And he was impossible to hire. Because Jonathan didn't work for money. He worked for principle, and he only took cases he believed in. Miriam sent him a letter. Just one. She didn't know if he'd even read it. She poured her heart onto the page, explaining everything Leonard had done, everything she'd endured, everything she'd lost. She mailed it and waited. Weeks passed. Nothing. She started to lose hope. And then, one afternoon, her doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a man in his late 50s, impeccably dressed, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He introduced himself. Jonathan Hale. He said, "I read your letter. I'll take your case." Miriam cried. For the first time in years, she cried tears of relief. But Jonathan warned her. He said, "This won't be easy. Your husband is powerful. He'll fight dirty. He'll try to humiliate you. But if you're ready to stand up, I'll stand with you." Miriam nodded. She was ready. And in that moment, the wheels of justice began to turn. Fast forward to the courtroom. Leonard swaggers in like he owns the place. His mistress, Alina, clings to his arm, dressed like she's attending a victory party. She's 28, blonde, polished, and completely convinced that Leonard is about to make her the wealthiest woman in Chicago. Alina doesn't know that Leonard has made the same promises to 3 other women before her. She doesn't know that Leonard sees people as assets to be acquired and discarded. All she knows is that she's on the winning side, or so she thinks. Leonard's legal team is a wall of expensive suits. 5 attorneys, all from the most prestigious firm in the city. They've prepared a case designed to paint Miriam as a negligent wife, a bad mother, a woman who contributed nothing to Leonard's success. They've doctored timelines, manipulated financial records, prepared witnesses who will testify that Miriam was emotionally unstable. It's brutal, it's calculated, and Leonard thinks it's foolproof. Miriam sits quietly on the other side of the courtroom. She's dressed simply, elegantly, no jewelry, no makeup meant to impress, just quiet dignity. Beside her sits Jonathan Hale. He hasn't said a word yet. He's been reviewing documents, occasionally glancing at Leonard with an expression that's impossible to read. Leonard notices him, but dismisses him. He assumes Jonathan is some underpaid public defender Miriam scraped together. He has no idea who he's dealing with. The judge enters. Honorable Raymond Castellano, a man in his early 60s, known for being fair but tough. He's presided over some of the most contentious cases in the state. And today, as he takes his seat, something flickers in his eyes when he looks at Leonard. It's brief, almost imperceptible, but it's there. Recognition, or maybe something else. Leonard's lead attorney stands and begins the opening statement. It's everything you'd expect. Flowery language, emotional manipulation, claims that Leonard is a devoted father, a generous husband, a man who simply grew apart from his wife. The attorney paints Miriam as bitter, vindictive, trying to steal what Leonard built through his own hard work and genius. Alina smiles. Leonard leans back in his chair, confident. Then it's Jonathan's turn. He stands slowly. The room quiets. There's something about the way he moves, the way he commands space without saying a word. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He simply begins. Your Honor, before we proceed with theatrical narratives, I'd like to submit evidence that will clarify the actual facts of this case. He places a folder on the table. The sound echoes in the silent courtroom. Leonard's smile falters, just slightly. Jonathan continues. What we have here isn't a story of 2 people growing apart. It's a story of systematic financial abuse, deliberate asset concealment, and a 20-year campaign to erase a woman's contributions to an empire she helped build. He opens the folder. Inside are bank statements, emails, recorded phone calls, property transfer documents. Evidence that Leonard has been funneling money into offshore accounts for years. Evidence that he transferred marital assets into Alina's name to hide them from divorce proceedings. Evidence of threats, manipulation, and lies. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Leonard's attorneys scramble. Alina's face drains of color. Leonard himself sits frozen, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. And that's when Jonathan drops the first real bomb. He plays an audio recording. Leonard's voice, cold and clear, recorded during a phone call 6 months earlier. "I don't care what it takes. Make sure she gets nothing. She's not taking a dime of what I built. And if she fights, I'll bury her." The judge leans forward. The room is silent except for Leonard's voice echoing from the speakers. Miriam closes her eyes, remembering the night she heard those words through the bedroom door, remembering how small she felt, how powerless. But now, in this courtroom, those words are evidence. They're proof, and they're destroying Leonard's carefully constructed image piece by piece. And that was the moment the floor beneath Leonard's empire began to crack. If your heart is racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Leonard's attorneys try to recover. They object, they argue procedure, they claim the evidence was obtained illegally. But Jonathan is prepared for every move. He calmly explains that every piece of evidence was gathered legally, through proper channels, with full documentation. He's been building this case for months, and he's left no stone unturned. The next hours are a masterclass in legal warfare. Jonathan systematically dismantles every lie Leonard's team has constructed. He produces emails showing Leonard instructing his accountants to hide income. He presents testimony from former employees who witnessed Leonard's verbal abuse toward Miriam. He reveals property records showing that Leonard transferred their family home into a shell corporation controlled by Alina, attempting to keep it out of divorce proceedings. Each revelation hits like a hammer blow. Alina starts to panic. She whispers urgently to Leonard, but he waves her off, his face red, sweat beading on his forehead. This isn't how today was supposed to go. He was supposed to humiliate Miriam, walk away with everything, and start his new life. Instead, he's watching his empire get dissected in front of a packed courtroom. But Jonathan isn't done. He calls Miriam to the stand. Leonard's attorneys object, but the judge allows it. Miriam walks to the witness box, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice steady. Jonathan asks her to describe her role in building Leonard's business. And she does. She talks about the early days, the long nights, the designs she created, the investors she courted, the contracts she negotiated. She talks about sacrificing her own career to support his dream. She talks about raising their children alone, while Leonard traveled the world closing deals. And then Jonathan asks the question that breaks the courtroom's heart. "Mrs. Drake, in all those years, all that work, all that sacrifice, did your husband ever thank you?" Miriam's eyes fill with tears, but she doesn't let them fall. She looks directly at Leonard and says, "No, he never did. He told me I was lucky to be his wife, that I should be grateful for the life he gave me. But I wasn't his wife. I was his employee, and he fired me the moment he found someone younger." The courtroom is silent. Even Leonard's attorneys look uncomfortable. The judge writes something in his notes, his expression unreadable. And that's when Leonard makes his biggest mistake. He can't help himself. He stands up and shouts, "This is ridiculous. I built everything. She was just there. She didn't do anything." The judge slams his gavel. "Mr. Drake, sit down and control yourself, or I will hold you in contempt." But the damage is done. Leonard's mask has slipped. The courtroom has seen the real him, the cruel, arrogant man who believes his wife's contributions were worthless. And Jonathan, ever the strategist, simply nods, as if Leonard just proved his entire case for him. The judge calls for a recess. As people file out, Leonard storms into the hallway, Alina hurrying after him. She grabs his arm. "Leonard, what's happening? You said this would be easy. You said she had nothing." Leonard pulls his arm away. "Shut up. Just shut up. I'm handling it." But he's not handling it. He's unraveling. Inside, Miriam sits quietly with Jonathan. He places a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did, beautifully. The truth is on your side now." Miriam nods, but she's exhausted. 20 years of pain, of silence, of enduring Leonard's cruelty, all coming to the surface at once. She wonders if justice is even possible, if she'll ever truly be free. But Jonathan has one more card to play, one that will change everything. He thought money could save him, but fate had brought someone into that courtroom who knew the truth, and that truth was about to come out. The courtroom reconvenes. Leonard has composed himself, or at least he's trying to appear composed. His attorneys huddle around him, whispering strategies, preparing their defense. They're planning to attack Miriam's credibility, to argue that she's exaggerating her contributions, to paint Jonathan's evidence as circumstantial. They think they can still win this, but then Jonathan stands. And the way he stands, the way the light catches his face, the way the entire courtroom seems to hold its breath, you know something massive is coming. He addresses the judge. Your Honor, I have one final piece of evidence to submit. It relates not only to this divorce, but to a matter of legal ethics and potential criminal conduct. Leonard's face goes pale. His attorneys freeze. Jonathan opens a sealed envelope. He removes a document and holds it up. In 2003, Leonard Drake was under investigation for securities fraud. He was accused of manipulating property values to defraud investors. The case was building momentum. Prosecutors had evidence. Witnesses were cooperating. And then, suddenly, the case disappeared. Evidence went missing. Witnesses recanted. The investigation was quietly closed. The courtroom murmurs. The judge leans forward, his eyes locked on Jonathan. Jonathan continues. What the public never knew was that Leonard Drake bribed a court official to make that case go away. That official had access to evidence lockers, witness lists, and internal prosecution documents. He sabotaged the investigation from the inside, and in return, Leonard paid him $2 million, transferred through offshore accounts to avoid detection. The room erupts. Reporters scribble frantically. Leonard's attorneys jump to their feet, objecting, demanding proof. And then Jonathan says the words that shatter everything. That court official was Michael Castellano, the younger brother of the presiding judge in this courtroom today. Every eye in the courtroom turns to Judge Castellano. His face is stone. His knuckles are white as he grips his gavel. The silence is deafening. Judge Castellano speaks, his voice low and controlled. Mr. Hale, that is an extraordinarily serious allegation. I hope you can substantiate it. Jonathan nods. I can, Your Honor. I have bank records, wire transfers, and a signed affidavit from Michael Castellano himself, written 2 weeks before his death last year. He confessed everything. He named Leonard Drake, and he expressed deep remorse for what he did, particularly for how it damaged your reputation and the integrity of the legal system you've dedicated your life to uphold. The judge closes his eyes briefly. When he opens them, they're filled with something Leonard has never seen directed at him before. Not anger, not disgust. Justice. Pure, unwavering justice. The judge's voice is steady. Mr. Drake, stand up. Leonard stands, his legs shaking. Did you bribe my brother to obstruct a criminal investigation in 2003? Leonard's attorneys try to intervene, but the judge silences them with a look. Answer the question, Mr. Drake. Leonard's mouth opens, closes, opens again. He looks at his attorneys, at Alina, at the packed courtroom, and then he makes the worst decision of his life. He lies. No, I have no idea what he's talking about. This is a fabrication. Jonathan doesn't react. He simply hands a copy of the affidavit to the bailiff, who delivers it to the judge. Judge Castellano reads it. His jaw tightens. He looks up at Leonard. My brother died of cancer. In his final days, he wanted to make things right. He confessed to our family what he'd done. And now, seeing you stand here and lie about it, knowing what you took from him, from us, from the justice system, the judge pauses, collects himself. This court will be taking a very close look at these allegations, separate from this divorce. But first, we're going to finish what we started here today. But Jonathan isn't done. There's one more twist, one more betrayal Leonard never saw coming. Jonathan turns to Alina. Miss Monroe, would you please stand? Alina looks confused, frightened. She stands slowly. Jonathan's voice is calm but firm. Miss Monroe, you've been in a relationship with Leonard Drake for approximately 2 years. Is that correct? She nods. And during that time, has Mr. Drake made you any promises regarding his assets, his properties, or his wealth? Alina glances at Leonard. He's shaking his head frantically, but she's terrified now, and terrified people tell the truth. Yes, she whispers. He promised me everything. He said once the divorce was final, we'd get married, and I'd be taken care of. He transferred properties into my name. He said it was to protect them. Jonathan nods. And did you believe Mr. Drake loved you? Or did you believe Mr. Drake loved what you represented? Alina's face crumbles. I don't know. I don't know anymore. And then she does something that shocks everyone. She reaches into her purse, pulls out her phone, and hands it to Jonathan. I have text messages, videos, bank transfers, everything. I thought I was special, but after sitting here today, listening to everything he did to his wife, I realize I'm not. I'm just the next one. Leonard explodes. You traitorous little... The judge slams his gavel so hard it echoes like a gunshot. Mr. Drake, one more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom in handcuffs. But it's too late. The mask is completely gone. Leonard is exposed, not as a powerful billionaire, but as a coward, a liar, a man who destroys everyone who gets close to him. And that's when Leonard understood. He wasn't fighting a divorce. He was facing the truth. And the truth was undefeated. The judge calls for a final recess to review all the evidence. When court reconvenes 2 hours later, the atmosphere has completely shifted. Leonard sits alone now. His attorneys have distanced themselves, literally moving their chairs a few inches away. Alina is gone, escorted out by her own lawyer. Miriam sits with Jonathan, calm, centered, finally at peace with whatever comes next. Judge Castellano enters. Everyone rises. He takes his seat and looks directly at Leonard. Mr. Drake, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen many things. I have seen greed. I have seen cruelty. I have seen people use the legal system as a weapon. But I have rarely seen someone as thoroughly committed to deception and destruction as you. He pauses. This court finds in favor of Miriam Drake on all counts. The courtroom erupts in applause. The judge allows it for a moment before calling for order. He continues. Mrs. Drake is hereby awarded 60% of all marital assets, including properties, businesses, and investments. She will retain full ownership of the family home. Mr. Drake will be responsible for all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Drake in this proceeding. Leonard slumps in his chair, but the judge isn't finished. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented regarding the 2003 securities fraud case and the bribery of a court official, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. Mr. Drake, you may face charges of obstruction of justice, bribery, and fraud. You will surrender your passport and remain in this jurisdiction pending that investigation. 2 bailiffs step forward. Leonard is escorted out, not in handcuffs, but the symbolism is clear. He's no longer in control. Miriam sits still, letting it all wash over her. She's won. But more than that, she's free. Free from Leonard's shadow, free from his control, free to rebuild her life on her own terms. Jonathan places a hand on her shoulder. You did it. She looks up at him, tears finally falling. No, we did it. Thank you. He smiles gently. Justice isn't about winning, Mrs. Drake. It's about truth. And today, the truth won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm, but Miriam doesn't stop to answer questions. She walks down the steps, into the afternoon sunlight, and for the first time in 20 years, she feels light. She pulls out her phone and calls her children. Her daughter answers. Mom, how did it go? Miriam smiles, a real smile. It's over, sweetheart. It's finally over. Her daughter cries with relief. Her son, on the other end, asks, Are you okay, Mom? And Miriam realizes she is. She's more than okay. She's herself again. 3 months later, Miriam opens her own architecture firm. She names it Cooper Designs, reclaiming her maiden name. Her first project is designing affordable housing for single mothers. She hires young women, mentors them, gives them opportunities she wishes she'd had. She dates again, cautiously, but she's in no rush. She's learning to enjoy her own company, learning to love herself again. Leonard, meanwhile, faces trial. The district attorney uncovers a web of fraud, bribery, and corruption spanning 2 decades. Several of Leonard's business partners turn on him to save themselves. Alina testifies against him, providing evidence that seals his fate. He's convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His empire crumbles. His name becomes synonymous with greed and betrayal. Alina disappears from public life. She moves to another state, changes her name, tries to start over. She learns, too late, that there are no shortcuts to happiness, that real love isn't transactional, that being someone's trophy is the loneliest place in the world. And Judge Castellano? He retires shortly after the case, his faith in the justice system restored by witnessing truth prevail. In his final speech from the bench, he says, "Justice moves slowly. Sometimes it feels like it's not moving at all, but it never stops. And when it arrives completely." He dedicates his retirement to criminal justice reform, ensuring that cases like his brother's manipulation of the system never happen again. Miriam attends his retirement ceremony. They speak briefly. He thanks her for her courage. She thanks him for his fairness. They both understand that this case was about more than a divorce. It was about accountability, about refusing to let power erase truth, about standing up even when the whole world tells you to stay down. Justice moves slowly, but it never stops moving. And sometimes, the people we underestimate the most become the ones who rewrite the ending. Miriam was underestimated her entire marriage, seen as decorative, dismissed as irrelevant, but she was always stronger than Leonard ever knew. She just needed the right moment, the right support, and the right belief in herself to prove it. Not every betrayal ends in brokenness. Some end in rebirth. Miriam's story isn't unique. There are countless women and men trapped in relationships with people who see them as possessions, who use wealth and power to control and diminish. But Miriam's story is proof that escape is possible, that justice is possible, that reclaiming your life is possible. It takes courage, it takes support, it takes believing that you deserve better. And Miriam proved that she did. So now I want to ask you something. What would you have done in Miriam's place? Would you have fought back? Or would you have walked away quietly, accepting whatever scraps Leonard offered? Think about that for a moment. Think about how much strength it takes to stand up to someone who has all the power, all the money, all the control. Miriam could have given up. She could have accepted a small settlement and disappeared. But she didn't. She chose to fight. And that choice changed everything. Do you believe karma always comes around? Do you believe that people like Leonard eventually face consequences for their actions? Or do you think the powerful get away with everything? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your thoughts on this story. Did Miriam get the justice she deserved? Was Leonard's punishment enough? Should Alina have faced more consequences? Tell me what you think. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it made you think about the people in your own life who deserve justice, then do me a favor. Share this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible. Share it with someone who feels trapped. Share it with someone who needs to know that truth. Eventually, always wins. And if you're new here, if this is your first time watching one of our stories, welcome. We tell real stories about real struggles, real betrayals, and real triumphs. Stories that make you think, stories that make you feel, stories that remind you that life is complicated, messy, beautiful, and worth fighting for. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next story. Because trust me, if you think this story was powerful, wait until you hear what we have coming next. Stories of revenge, redemption, justice, and the human spirit refusing to break. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when we drop our next story. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And remember, justice moves slowly, but it never stops moving. Keep fighting, keep believing, and never let anyone make you feel small. You're worth more than that. You always have been.